Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 12th of Feb 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comments. Coming up in the show, just a double bill this time around, Jesse Schell, an analyst and CEO of Puzzle Clubhouse, in his DICE 2013 speech, claims that releasing a demo actually harms your game sales. And a report on the next Xbox, the Durango, which anonymous Microsoft sources claim requires a Kinect to even function. Jesse Schell is an interesting person. He's an analyst. He's also the CEO of Puzzle Clubhouse, which is an experimental website of his whereby he crowd develops various games. Now, he had a speech at DICE in 2010. It had a number of rather interesting predictions, some of which were right, some of which were not, and he had the chance to do it again this year, a couple of days ago in fact, and he made a very interesting claim. He claimed that putting out a demo was actually harmful for your sales, and according to his graph, the numbers backed him up. Now, the video in question I would suggest you watch because it's pretty interesting. It doesn't matter if you agree with this guy's views or not, they're interesting, right? That's the problem a lot of people seem to have. I only want to listen to guys that I agree with. Yeah, well, you won't expand your knowledge and your horizons there, so that doesn't seem like a very smart thing to do. This guy's pretty intelligent, so yeah, watch his stuff. It's kind of cool. Anyway, the point is about 10 minutes into the video, and he basically displays a graph showing Xbox 360 sales figures, which indicate that the games with a trailer and yet without a demo are the ones that sell the most in comparison to those that have a demo and a trailer, just the demo, or games with no demo and no trailer. He made the argument that it comes down to a specific mindset. When you absorb marketing material, you get an idea in your head that you really want something, and you form a plan in order to get it, a plan to experience it. However, a demo hijacks that plan by allowing you to experience it before you actually put down the money, and as a result, he claims, a lot of people will simply stop at the demo and not actually go through with the transaction. Now, he doesn't say that this is because, oh, well, I actually didn't like it, or the game didn't turn out to be as good as I hoped. What he said was, it's because you gain enough of the experience from the demo to not really be so driven to complete your plan, as it were, to acquire that copy of the game, to experience it for yourself. It's a rather interesting point of view, but I don't really see this as a particularly strong case. I mean, for one thing, the graph itself, if you want to pick at that, is literally the most vague thing I've seen. It doesn't give any specific examples whatsoever. The data itself comes from a research company called EDA. They specialize in video game marketing research as well as stuff like mock reviews, which is actually a fairly common practice within the industry. You send out a copy of a game to be mock reviewed, and then you utilize that review to actually make the game better, or at least that's the plan anyway. It's sometimes also used for the purposes of calculating investments and all sorts of things like that. I've actually done consulting for a number of games whereby it's been a case of investors are thinking of putting some money into something and they need experts within the gaming scene to explain to them whether or not it's a good idea. So it's pretty common. And no doubt these guys know what they're talking about, but this data is just completely and totally without context. I mean, the best possible thing you could do would be to provide examples. Also, what do we mean by cumulative Xbox 360 unit sales? Are we talking an average here? I mean, it seems like it must be, because we're talking about games going up just above 500,000 units sold, and there are, of course, loads of games that have sold more than that. So I have to wonder what exactly this is referencing. I'd also like to take the data apart on the subject of whether or not it's universally true that having a demo and a trailer is way, way worse. In fact, it would cut your sales in half, according to this guy, than just having a trailer. I don't really think this is necessarily true because I don't think it's taking into account just how much marketing is put behind the games which don't have a demo and the business model behind not producing the demo to begin with. The business model behind not producing the demo, for the most part, involves the notion that it costs a lot of money to actually make a good demo. There's a second notion, which could very well play into this guy's opinion, which is a demo can potentially sabotage the sales of your game if it's not well received. and people are pretty skeptical of demos because obviously you're going to want to put your best foot forward, and this thing serves as a marketing tool. So you often pick and choose really good bits of the game, and if you don't, you get torn apart by the gaming community in general. So, what are we talking about here? What are these games which are selling a huge amount of copies? Because I'm thinking lots of EA stuff, lots of Activision stuff, lots of franchise stuff, lots of sports games, for instance, all of the Call of Duty franchise stuff. We're talking about like the biggest sellers on the 360, which are, generally speaking, stuff like Call of Duty, stuff like Assassin's Creed, and stuff like FIFA, Madden, and NBA. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about there. And none of those games have demos. Assassin's Creed had a multiplayer beta. Is that being calculated into these numbers, I wonder? Because beta's not technically a demo. It's hard to say because we don't have any data at all from EDAR beyond what this guy's just shown in this very small graph. It's also being horribly skewed by the idea that smaller games, like indie stuff that gets released on Xbox Live Arcade, pretty much has to have a demo or trial. That's the rule, right? An Xbox Live Arcade game must have a trial of some sort, so that's counted in there, and yet those games naturally sell less than the latest Call of Duty title. So I feel these numbers are horribly skewed, quite frankly, and I really hope that this advice isn't taken. I really hope that it's not, because it is universally damaging. I mean, there is no good that can possibly come from encouraging no demo. There is no good that can come from encouraging over-marketing a game and not actually providing honest information to the consumer. And obviously, this guy's job is not to help the consumers, right? That's not his job, so you can't really blame him for that. I'm not going to say, oh god, he's the enemy of the games industry. He's not. He's just doing his job, and his job is to be an analyst for the industry, not to be an analyst for consumers. But I think that you're just flagrantly ignoring the blatant benefits of a demo in the first place, the massive increased visibility, the way that you can get people just begging for more if you actually create the demo in the right way, the huge safety net that it creates for consumers. Are you really willing to drop $60 on something if you're going sight unseen based on marketing trailers alone? Unless it is a franchise title that you already know what to expect from, chances are no. I don't see huge examples of original IP coming out without demos and being hugely successful. The only way that you can make that happen is if you sink a huge amount of money into marketing. I think probably the best example last year of a really successful original IP was Dishonored. And Bethesda threw a ton of marketing behind that. The YouTube presence of that game was almost unprecedented. And I'm not just talking about ads either. I'm talking about the playthroughs. I'm talking about the interactive stuff. Just the sheer amount of content that they put out prior to that. It's pretty solid. Now, if they put a demo out, would that have helped? Potentially, especially considering it's a single-player game. People get a little bit gun-shy about those sort of things. I mean, when the game first came out, there were rumors based on someone that had got a pre-release copy that this thing would run about 3 to 4 hours, and that rumor circulated all over the internet, and people got a little bit gun-shy about it. It's not good. You can alleviate that, or at least sort of override that fear by producing a demo and saying, this is what the game has to offer. Now, if you're in the position where you can throw millions upon millions of dollars at the marketing, then great. Fine. The thing is, chances are your game's going to sell a lot of copies anyway as a direct result of the fact that you've just thrown a ton of marketing dollars at it. But what happens when you can't do that? And more to the point, what happens when you don't want to? As far as I'm concerned, it's harmful to the industry that so much is being spent on marketing. And the reason is, of course, that it's creating huge budgets for games that are quite frankly unsustainable. And it means that if you've spent 20, 30 million, even more than that on marketing, then your game's going to make so much more money in order to actually make the franchise viable and mean that the development house doesn't end up closing down. The last thing we want to be doing is encouraging a huge amount of money to keep getting thrown at this. Not to mention other obvious impacts and drawbacks of not having a demo, including, well, I'll just pirate it to demo it. Oh, I don't really feel like paying $60 for it now, so I guess I'll just finish the game. I mean, how many times has that happened to people? I want to see more data. I really, really do. I want to see very specific examples, and it would not surprise me at all if those at the very top are big franchise titles rather than original IP. I would be very surprised to see a ton of original IP up there. The fact of the matter is that unless it's an established franchise that you're already into, it's very difficult to convince someone to drop $60 sight unseen without at least having the chance to try the game out. There are yet more rumors circulating in regards to the successor of the 360, codenamed the Durango, and this once again comes from anonymous sources provided to Kotaku, so take it with a mound of salt, and it would indicate that the new console will require a Kinect system plugged into the actual device and calibrated for the console in order for the console to even work to begin with. Reportedly, the Durango will ship with a new version of the Kinect with it, and the actual system itself will supposedly employ multitasking, which enables you to run multiple apps and games simultaneously. Now, the final hardware specs, at least according to this piece, once again, this is all very much unconfirmed, consist of a 64-bit Direct3D version 11 800MHz GPU, an 8-core x64 1.6 GHz CPU with 4 megs of L2 cache, as well as 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM and 500 gigabytes of onboard memory, as well as a USB 3 port and the standard HDMI out. It will also consist of an optical drive for 50 gigabyte discs, although we're not sure if that's Blu-ray or some kind of other proprietary format. I would have to imagine it's probably Blu-ray. Well, that's wonderful, isn't it? This annoying optional contraption. This thing which scans your room and can only function if fed over-exaggerated dancing motions is finally forcing its way into the hearts and minds and living rooms of gamers. Screw this, I've got to say. I really hope that this isn't true. I understand, oh yeah, Kinect's great. This is the attitude of Microsoft. I mean, Kinect sold millions upon millions of units. And games like Just Dance and Dance Central have sold extremely well. Even Star Wars Kinect sold really well, regardless of the fact that it's goddamn awful. Yet up until this point, this has been very much an optional device with essentially zero use to gamers. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a nice piece of tech. It's really cool, futuristic stuff, but it has been an optional accessory and not a required part of the actual system itself. The notion that it would be part of the system, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty damn abhorrent, especially if it will severely influence the development practices of any game that ends up on that system. Hell, it may be that Microsoft even requires you to use Kinect functionality within your game. I'm hoping that's not the case. And when I'm going to talk about the myriad of obvious privacy concerns of having this giant scanner and high-resolution 3D camera in your room. We could talk about that for hours, but, we don't need to do that. Just the notion of needing this in order to run. I mean, think about it for a second. It's like needing a PlayStation Eye in order to run your PS4 or whatever. It's just an awful notion. I mean, I've got this kind of functionality for my TV, right? I've got motion control, I've got voice control. You know what? I don't use either of them because it's pointless. I would rather just use my remote. It's easier. And as of yet, we've seen no examples whatsoever of the Kinect genuinely enhancing gameplay, instead of just being a gimmicky waste of space. Any attempt to make games specifically for Kinect that are anything more than dancing games has resulted in absolute disaster. You just need to go and look at Steel Battalion Heavy Armor for proof of that. It is a joke. Among the top 20 ranked games that require Kinect, there is only one of them that is actually a real game, that being The Gunstringer, which sold about 3 copies, unfortunately. The highest rated Kinect game is actually Puss in Boots, if you can believe that. No, I'm dead serious. Yes, it is the Shrek spin-off. Everything else is dance, dance, fitness, dance, bloody dance. That's all it is. We've got Dance Central 2, Dance Central, Your Shape Fitness Evolved, Just Dance Greatest Hits, Kinectables, Kinect Sports, Zumba Fitness Rush, UFC Personal Trainer, Kinect Rush, a Disney Pixar Adventure, Disney Kinect Land Adventure, bloody bollocks. Which is not the official title, but it's a bunch of nonsense. Which is totally fine if you're not up for playing real games, right? If you want to play either fitness stuff or dance-related stuff or stuff for kids, I mean, it's great for kids, absolutely. But it's no good for gamers. And these are the guys who are going to be buying your system off the bat unless you offer something truly crazy to attract in a different market. Is this what it's going to be? And is the new Xbox going to be the Wii of this generation? Who the hell knows? I certainly hope not, but All I can say is, well, Sony, please save us from this craziness. Please just release something that's powerful and something that works well and something that's just a nice system at a reasonable price and something that has a lot of good launch games on it. Just give us that. Jesus. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch, and I will see you next time.